Well, yeah, thank you everyone for joining this morning, and thank you, Paul, for coming and being the next guest on our interviews with. It's great to have you here, and we've obviously had lots of conversations over the last few months in Land Management 2.0, so really lovely to have this opportunity to chat with you. So Paul is managing the South Ormsby Estate up in Lincolnshire and joined in 2018. And really the estate is going through a massive phase of change, not least because the sector's changing, but also, Paul's vision for the future. As well as John, who's acquired the estate. So Paul's really here to share about the change they're undertaking, the mindset that they've taken on, and the vision that they've got for the estate. So Paul, really lovely to have you here today. And yes, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So Paul, I mean, the way we start these interviews is really would love to understand a bit about you, your journey and history. So I'd love to understand how you got into farming and into land management, the passion that you have for it, what you're doing today, so how you got to where you are today, what you are up to today, and also your vision for the future. So yeah, we'd just love to understand your journey. So over to you.
Many thanks, Tim, and good morning, everybody. So yeah, Paul Barnes, estate manager for South Ormsby Estate. Back into, let's say, 1851, I think I can trace it back to our family farm was in Lincolnshire. We was dairy farmers, mixed farmers. So you can imagine in those days, it was all about producing what we can produce for your own table. Moving on from there, I think my forefathers was sort of forward thinking, and then they set up the milk inside and bottling and delivering their own milk. So there's been a connection there for me to produce products to get to the end customer. And that's sort of always sort of transponded through my career to sort of where we are now at sort of South Ormsby. Being able to get a product, look at it and see how we can add value to it. Now, whether that's from my days of growing, washing, packing and delivering potatoes to growing organic veg and again putting that into a box scheme and delivering it. But it's that connection with the end customer and in theory, adding value. So how can we step away from the run of the mill industry and just connect more with the end customer? So throughout my career, I've tried to sort of evolve and change and adapt, to whatever's needed to try and achieve objectives, goals, visions, whether it's into products we grow or what we do and how we work in the countryside. That brings us on pretty well to where we are here at sort of South Ormsby. So again, yes, we've got a vision. We're looking. We want to work in countryside. We want a resilient environment. We want a healthy place for people to live and visit. We want a cohesive community. Because the community, I think, in places is slipped away. There's too many houses being sold and people moved in and all they seem to do is come and live and work and move away. So we want to try and add to that to try and get this community and make it better for the surrounding area. We have a living landscape, which we do within the industry. Everything is living in and around it. So we need to try and maintain that and looking at that. Engage in the community. So so being transparent, because obviously here at South Ormsby, the estate was in the previous family for some 400 years. And then John and Jan bought the estate in 2016, the new custodians. So again, trying to engage with the community on what our vision is and our plan is going forward is to share it with that. They want to come onto the journey, and we want to try and take them with them. We've got this living landscape that we spoke about before, and that's, we don't want to see the decline of the estate. We want to try and make it better and move forward. That encompasses on the, ecological vision as well, because we need to, how do you want to put it? We need our beneficiaries. We all farm inside the fields, but what happens outside is key to how we also work as well. So there's a lot going on. And personally for me, the vision that my forefathers have and what I have is one that's shared with the current owners of the estate. So it's great in that aspect that, if you want to use the word, we're all batting on the same wicket and all heading in the same line, it's great. So it's something that's got to be enjoyable, and we all enjoy it. You know, we have some laughs, we have some disappointments, but I think at the moment that's just generally across the board. There's a lot of stuff to be dealt with. Obviously, we're in with COVID. We had some setbacks with that, but again, you adapt to change, you try and move forward. So that's where I am at the moment, Tim, from our family farming background. The big factor on that is as well, I was young when it was all sort of coming through and it got sold off. So my passion is to try and generate a better environment for people who are passing through or coming to live and work here, but also for my two children to try and give them something that they can then take forward in the future. So if I'm fortunate enough to get a parcel of land and say, there you go, children, what do you want to do with it? And try and move on and shape it, you know, but enjoy it. That's the thing that, you know, we've always got to try and enjoy as much as we can through every day. I remember a phrase from my grandfather. He says, learn something new every day and always try and do 2 things a day. And I said, you know, I said to Tim this morning, I said, I'd love to grandfather to be alive, that we're actually trying to juggle 8 things a day. So it makes it a busy day here at South Ormsby, but, you know, it makes it an enjoyable one. So that's where we are at the moment.
Well, Paul, it's so interesting to kind of hear, because it sounds like you took on a really huge challenge. Not only did you join the estate relatively recently, so just under 3 years ago, but also John acquired the estate, you know, just slightly before you joined. And it sounds like you're going through this massive transition right now in the estate. Partly it's how do you generate the vision, you know, what assets and resources do you have? The key point that you mentioned is, you know, how do you add value to everything you're doing? You know, how do you take the community on a journey with you? And I just wonder if there's anything you can share about, like, partly how, when you came in, like, how did you take stock of what you had, understand what John's vision was for the estate, and how did you start to really build up that strategic plan? Because obviously as a sector, we're going through this massive phase of transition right now. And really, whether anyone likes it or not, we've all got to start to be prepared to adapt. And I just wonder if you've got any kind of words of wisdom or advice on kind of the practicalities of how you started to form that vision and the strategic plan and choose what you were going to, you know, undertake on the estate.
The visions, I think the vision is there because the vision is trying to make something better. We want to try and improve things. So the estate, when it was purchased and when it was took on, was good, you know, but how do you make something better and greater? So you've got to have these visions, Tim, to try and, okay, so how we're going to set this out and how we're going to go forward. To your point of where do you start? Well, for here, it's, you know, it's boots on, you know, it's seeing what is out there, you know, what do we need to do? What do we need to change? Where can we put something in? So we all know our farms, we all know our landscape, but where do we need to make those changes to make them beneficial? Whether it's hedgerows, whether it's cleaning ditches, whether it's watercourses, whether it's margins. So again, it's having that piece of paper and that plan that, you know, well, what's going to work for us in the estate, you know, from a healthy place to live, from, you know, setting out walkways across the estate, you know, so promoting walks, to being health, to being vibrant. It's all part of that, and trying to engage with the community, with the public, to what we can all try and do and steer forward. So it's very hard, but I think you've got to, you know, start with a vision, which we've got, you know, we've got the 6 key points in through from there, and then take those individual ones and say, well, how do we move them forward, you know, to make the estate the greatest estate in the world, you know, because that's what we're trying to do on some of the previous interviews, you know. So how can we make the UK a benchmarking farm, or you know, one of the best countries and bits and bobs to people to come and look at us. So that's our vision here. You know, we want to try and be the best estate in the world, you know, but it's got to be through these visions, through the drive and through the passion, that we can add to it and then improve on it.
That's and I guess that's obviously something that John obviously holds dear to his heart. How can he really, you know, essentially, invest effectively in the estate to really kind of show the estate off? And I understand that you were on Country File recently as well, Paul. And I guess what an amazing place to start to show off what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it. I wonder, is there anything that you could sort of share in terms of, you know, when it comes to you know, elevating the prestige of an estate, or building a brand, or really coming to represent something, maybe a little bit about how you share that story with the outside world to bring people on a journey with you?
Yeah, so the country file program, that was, so to start that off, it was very sort of low key. You know, they wanted some filming of some hedge laying, and hedge laying is something that we do on an annual basis on the estate as part of a program. And then from there, they clicked on the website, and that's when pulls it into to make people aware. It's the social media side, Tim. So the country file, it just went from one to the other, from one to the other. And then obviously, as people that's seen the program, we have the gin distillery, you know, so the diversification that we're doing onto the estate. For also what we're trying to do on the Lincoln red cattle. So we've got a rare breed closed herd of cows. You know, we're moving those to organic status. We're also farming those under PFLA regulations. You know, we're looking at, you know, mob grazing, because we all know these, you know, the benefits of, you know, different grazing methods to the soil health, to the benefit of the livestock. So it's that the branding of the estate, it's there, it's what we put out, I think, into the media. But as far as how we can share that, it's having a product that we can sell to the customer. Because again, if you're just going to put it into a shelf, well, you don't know where it's come from. So this is where it comes back to the marketing. So if we can pick up and we can sell these beef boxes, you know, and we can sell the craft gin out of the distillery. And that was the beauty of the country file program. As far as marketing tool, fantastic. Yeah, it really did a surge on we didn't expect, you know, the high output it was being. It was a bit of a shock and a bit of a, you know, stand back at where it was going to be. But it came across, you know, as here is the estate that we're trying to take it from some fantastic history to try and take it forward. Now, whether that's through our Saturday club members that we have that come in and they build bird boxes, they pick litter, you know, they clean some leaves, they do some log stacking, but the guys are getting out and they're doing Saturday work and they enjoy it, you know, and they're getting paid for it. So again, it's all bringing it all forward into one package to help people appreciate it and understand what we're trying to do. As much as we can be, we're trying to be as transparent as possible to say, well, look, this is what we're looking at doing with our properties, and this is what we're looking at probably doing with developments and hedgerows and going through from there. So it's sharing that vision, shall we say, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. So engagement with people is key, but we also need to try and understand that it's still going to be a working estate, as profitable estate as much as possible.
Yeah, because and Paul, just to sort of touch on some of those new enterprises, I assume they're new enterprises. The cattle, the Lincoln red cattle, the gin distillery. These are all new enterprises that came. Yep. And I think in one of our previous conversations, you talked about the objective of sort of transitioning the estate to having relatively few enterprises on the estate, and you've really got a vision to have quite a few, if I remember rightly. And I just want, I mean, could you open that up a little bit? And I guess maybe what I'm curious about is you've got a very, very compelling vision that's broken into the 6 segments. As you say, you share those all the time with the community, with the public, you know, through social media channels. And now you're really starting to, kind of going back to your earliest point about adding value, you're trying to add value in all these different pockets to create this sort of, I guess, portfolio approach. And just before we started, you were mentioning about, you know, in the transition to Elms, you know, frankly, we don't know what Elms is going to look like just now. So how do you become a master of your own destiny, put in place what you need to have, as you say, a profitable estate? Could you share a little bit more about those additional enterprises that you're building, maybe how you're bringing them about, whether you're sort of outsourcing those or whether you're keeping them totally in-house? Yeah, I'd love to understand a bit more about that.
Yeah, so the aim is to have 50 businesses here on the estate, ticking away, you know, in development works where we've got micro offices, you know, kitchen, food preparation. They're going through from there. It's the starting block of the vision to saying, how can we create that community? How can we create, you know, a healthy place? So if we can generate healthy food and, you know, locally sourced, it's starting from those basics. So what we're trying to do is, where we've got some redundant buildings, is we're looking at opening those up and getting redevelopment for some office units, for micro business units. So again, on the side of it, for people to come and live and work, we're trying to, where we've done the renovations on our properties, we're trying to get people to come and live and work and bring a business with them, or if they need a small office space or they need a little workshop, because we've got products here on the estate that probably people can use. You know, we're looking at one at the moment where we're trying to launch what extra products we can do out of our timber, because the timber either goes in for biomass or it just goes in for log sales. But how can we add value to it? So if we can take a 300-year-old oak tree and make it into some shelves, and then we can sell that as a byproduct of the timber, but it's selling the provenance of the estate and the history of the estate. So if we can get somebody in who can add to that and come with us and appreciate what we're trying to do, so we will invest in them. And it was the same as the distillery. Tristan, who we took on as the distillery manager, passion for the industry, passion for making gin. So there we go. There's the building, there's the equipment, and away you go. So even though he's, let's say he's on the payroll, he's his own boss, you know. And this is one beauty of being here on the estate, that we can try and help people. So we pass them on. There's an accountant, there's a PR, there's the marketing, so that in theory they're accountable for their own little business. So if people need to come on, entrepreneurial people, you know, or people who just want that little bit of extra help, well, fine, but it needs to be a benefit and needs to add value to what we're trying to do, Tim, to then be part of the estate vision, the strategic vision, but be part of it. So it's all, as you can imagine, with AONBs and planning, everything all takes time. So some of these strategic visions, yes, we've been talking about them and setting them out in 2017, 2018, but we realised that it's probably going to be a 5-year program before we actually start and get it done. So again, if we're asking people for thoughts, you know, and to approach us, well, fine, let's try and take it on, but it's not, I don't know if I put it like the phrase of like when we're trying to get something out of delivery, it's, you know, we're not Amazon. You can't click and collect it to go tomorrow. We've got to work at it. We've got to try and plan it. And it's the same with Elms, Tim. We know that it's probably going to come, but for here on the estate and what I'm trying to do and what we're trying to do is let's try and get ready for it now. So if it needs that, we need to address our hedgerows, and we need to plant some more hedgerows, and we need to add these corridors for the wildlife, because that's part of the vision, the ecology. You know, well, let's start and do it now, because it's in the ground now and it's up and running. So if we want to wait another 3 or 4 years for elms, fine, that's people's choice. But for us, I would sooner have a look at it and make that start now. So I think that's key as well, is to say, well, let's be prepared and let's move with it sooner rather than later. These little things that we can do, these PID projects that take years of planning, we know that. But as far as understanding and seeing what we've got on there on the living landscape, well, we know that there was a hedge where we can look back on the 1808 map, you know, that we've got, and that's how the estate was. So I think in one of the previous interviews, it was Charles was saying, well, where were we in history? So that's my starting point, is the 1808 map, saying, okay, what was the estate like then? And I can tell you then we're 192 fields. I think now we're down to about 87. You look at the kilometres of hedgerow that was done in 1808 to what we've got now, you can all see the decline. The only thing that's the amazing factor, Tim, is the woodlands. The woodland areas pretty much stopped the same, which probably in history, they always knew to take the worst piece of land out and go and plant a tree in it. But again, it's the parcels, it's the interconnection, it's the history of how the estate used to be. So I think with that and the transition into organic, because if we've got smaller parcels, we can probably manage them better. If we're then looking at the cattle and we're putting the cattle out onto crops and catch crops and grazing crops. So if we've got smaller paddocks, we can probably manage that better than you probably can do with a large open space. So again, increasing on our hedgerows, increasing the wildlife habitat, but also giving it shelter and obviously putting it back to, if you want to say, manageable areas, because that works with our system. We all know that elms is going to be there in the future. But at what level is it going to prepare for? What level of payment? That is the question that everybody asks on all these webinars, and nobody knows. So all we're doing here on the estate is we're preparing ourselves. We're putting these ecosystems in. We're putting the natural capital into place now, whether it's gapping up a few hedgerows, but putting these new hedgerows in and clearing ditches. We're starting now. Yeah. So we're slightly, if we're trying to be ahead of the game, let's be ahead than behind. But we all know that it's coming, because they are the key words at the moment: natural capital, carbon, ecosystem services. We don't know what it's going to be measured on, Tim. We don't know if there's going to be payment on it, on how we can transfer it, or what, who knows. But as far as us and what we're trying to do on our, if you call it strategic vision, it's a living landscape. So let's make that living landscape better. It was good when we got it, but let's try and make it better. So that, through the vision, through our passion, through trying to bring people on board, I'm very keen on using local people. One of our hedge layers, Matt, he's been around on the estate for several years, and it's key because when you speak to him, he's got a passion about it. And he's also got the next generation. And he's a bit like me. If we go and plant a tree, we try and take the children out and plant the tree. If Matt lays his head, he goes past with his 7-year-old son and says, Daddy did that. So when you come past here again in 10, 15 years' time, just remember Dad did that. And this is the thing. So engage in the local community to come with us and be supportive of what we're trying to do. Because we've got that many jobs, that many projects going, that we need our local people, our local businesses, our local community to come and work with us, which they're very happy to do, and then take it forward. So again, we say brand management on the social media side, but it's also management with our local businesses, our local people. So if I can get somebody within 5 miles, it's great. If I've got to go to 10 miles, it's fine. But it's when you start to get people out of the county, or they're just coming in to do a job, they lose the passion to say, well, I've actually done that. When I pass, when I go from a Sunday drive, I've done that, or I've done that. So that's what I'm trying to do. That's where I'm keen on, because that's something that's been sort of bred into me, saying, keep it local, support people, use people that you can build on, work with, and build up this relationship, because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do.
I love that. And to Paul, you talked at the beginning a little bit about so the change process, and I was just wondering, so bringing the community on with you, I guess the community, or the local people, maybe better to say, may not have been part of the estate journey previously. So you've really brought that in. You've really kind of opened a space up for them to come and get involved with hedge laying and tree planting and projects. Maybe is there anything you could say about, like, how to create a community around an estate's growth and change, and how do you create that community within kind of rural?
You're gonna get some positives, and you're always going to get negatives. It's the same as in the industry, Tim. You're going to get great outcomes, and you're going to get failures, and that's going to be the thing where you're going to get these changes in ownership, changing in thoughts, changing in tactics within and around the community. But you've still got to stick to what we're trying to do, which on our properties is come away from fossil fuels. Make them super efficient. So when people come and live and work here, they've got this super efficient house. We know that we've ticked off that list. Going on to the community side, Lincolnshire, and obviously our small villages around us, they're all individual communities. South Ormsby is a small community. So when we're trying to bring in these work units, these people to come and live, work in here, so we're building on it. We did one property, recently we did the old school up, and through COVID, we had to set it back from delaying the start on a nursery, because that's the building block, that's the foundation from the beginning. The primary school was closed in 1974, then it went to a community hall, and then the church used it. So we've got it back in. It was part of the estate in 2016. What can we do with it? Well, let's look at a nursery, because that's coming back to building that, the community values. So how can we get people to come in? How can we offer it to those family members? Because it's setting the stall out from that early stage, Tim, that we can take people and the next generation all the way through. So again, we've had some hiccups with COVID, and I think a lot of industries have. So we've had some setbacks through from that. So we've opened up a side cafe, so if people are walking through, a lot of the people in the local villages are either retired or, again, at the moment, there's a lot of people on furlough or the COVID. So we've approached that to say, well, let's open up a cafe. You can go past, you can scan a QR code and you can order a coffee or a tea, so again, engaging with people. That was nothing there before. A small grass paddock that we've got, well, let's put some fencing around it. We'll call it sheep dip paddock, and we've got a car park for our walkers to put in through. So it's small things have a big effect further down the line. So it's like I said this morning, Tim, every day is different here and everything is always changing. But at the heart of it is working for an owner who has this vision, who has this passion, but also the people that we've got on board have and share that passion as well to work with the community. We know that the power of technology is out there as well. I set up a local community WhatsApp group. It's been fantastic. The amount of pings you get, who's that van, or what's that van doing, or there's been some fly tipping. So a very simple system has brought the community together. And it's interesting as well on COVID, on the first lockdown, for our older generation of the community, we rung them up every day. Is there any shopping that we can get through from you? So it's starting on those simple, easy beginnings to try and for us to all come together, And the other thing is as well, I'm always at the end of the phone. So if we've got problems with property or bits and bobs, or they see me driving to the estate, half the time if I'm walking, I'll stop and have a chat. Because that's part of life, that's part of a community, and we can have a laugh and we can talk about things. And obviously people ask questions about, okay, what's happening? So we tell them, so it's to share it, it's to be that transparent. But it just never stops, it never stops. And that's the thing. So if we can grow this community, but we can also bring in these businesses, and we can also share this community and share the living landscape and everything we're trying to do with local businesses, whether they live here or not, but they come on and they have a sense of pride in what they do. Great, tick boxes. It says, there's not 1,000 media posts can replicate that, Tim.
Yeah, I love that, Paul. It really sounds from everything you're sharing, how much passion is imbued in everything that you do, both yourself and in the estate, and also how kind of crisp the vision is that you're kind of living into. I think the two together really kind of are what is creating this incredible estate. And then of course, naturally, things like Countryfile come along and you've got an incredible story to tell, and it's hugely inspiring. So Paul, that is beautiful. I'm just conscious of time, and so I thought we'll probably move on to the next section now and maybe draw on some of this stuff that you've just shared. So we're here, I'm on our 90-acre family farm just south of Guildford in Surrey. And I was wondering, do you have any advice for a farm like us? I know we're much smaller than most, but what should we be doing here on our farm to start thinking about transitioning into the future? What strategic steps would you say we should start to think about going through?
I think pretty much like what we've done here, Tim, is you'll know the lie of your land better than anybody else. So how can you make significant changes to that environment to make it beneficial for the future of any support payment, for the security of that holding going forward? So again, it's listing, it's writing down a piece of paper. What can we do? How can we? Is there a possibility of diversification? Is there a possibility of adding value anywhere to it? Is there anything that can be produced on here that's a niche market? How can we add value to something? Or even if it's on a small scale, how can you develop an area to make it benefit your time at the farm, and the next generation's time at the farm? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to future-proof, more and more down the line for the next generation. I think from where people are location-wise, it makes it very, very difficult for us here on the AONB. There's so many things that we need to approach and so many people we need to engage with, which is fine, and it's part of life. But I think it's understanding where you want to be yourself. Here on the estate, we've got these visions, so where do you want to be? Everybody's probably planning next year's cereal cropping or 2 or 3 years down the line, but where are we going to be in, okay, if we put some agroforestry in, where's that going to take me in 6-7 years time? So take it to the blue sky thinking, take it to the nth degree, and just try and fragment it back from there to saying, well, this would actually work, but it would actually be beneficial, it would be profitable. But again, it's benefiting my generation, the next generation, and also the land holding as well. So setting off from day one with a clear vision always helps. But if you could create that vision and understand what you're trying to achieve, then try and implement it as best as possible, Tim.
Brilliant. And is there anything in particular that you think Paul would be? I mean, I appreciate you don't know the farm, but is there any particular enterprises you think would be worth looking at given the change in the sector? Is it about mob grazing? Is it about, min-till? Is it about hedges and tree planting? Like, where do you see maybe the easy wins being as well?
I think the easy wins are what we've got in the asset already, Tim, which is everybody's talking about carbon. So we all know what we've got there. And for here on the estate, from any land that we've taken on and we're in the transition of taking land back, is the first thing I do is take a soil analysis, because if we're all talking about soil, if we're all trying to do beneficial, whether it's mini-till, regen ag or agriculture, we've all got to understand what our soil is doing from day one. So that's what I've done here. So we've had comprehensive reports across every field so we could understand where we are now. So how can we improve it? How can you make it better? So having that goal or that information, Tim, from day one for us and for me has always been key, because it's when you've taken something on, okay, I've taken on that, but how can I improve it? Where's it going to be in 5-10 years time? What's it going to be to an actual asset that's potentially going to be further down the line that could be sold? So understanding what you've got as far as your soil and your natural capital has got to be key for the start. But as far as, I don't know, niche crops, small things, it's trying to get to that product, Tim, that is direct to the customer. So if you can, how did I used to say? I used to grow it, wash it, pack it, and deliver it, and there was nobody in between. So you was in control with it all the way through. So if you can do that, it's so the pleasure it is to hand that product over to a customer, saying there's blood, sweat, and tears gone into that, and that's why it's got that premium price. That would be one factor that I do look at. I understand that it's, in some places it is small scale and there is people in the industry who are on large scale, but I think somebody within the size bracket of you are, if you can add value, if you can produce something, add value to it and get it to that doorstep, Tim, it's going to create so much more, I don't know, how do you want to put it? Thankfulness or receiving something that it's not just picked off a shelf. You can tell its provenance, you can tell where it's come from, its traceability. So adding value to it, getting it to the doorstep, for us and for me, it's always been key.
Well, brilliant, Paul. Thank you. That's great. And I think, it sounds, the way you share that, although obviously, the supply chain and managing that and washing the, fruit and veg and getting it to your customer requires getting systems in place. But just in terms of being master of your own destiny, I think that's really what you're pointing at there.
Yeah, it doesn't, it doesn't have to. We spoke before, we come on to. I've got great admiration for smallholders. These people that I know and see that are running a little three acre block and they're living off it and they're selling produce and they're making money from it, and it's great. It's that it doesn't have to be new shiny machinery. It doesn't have to be this. My point is how can you grow something, produce it, and get it to the end market? Because the satisfaction and the pleasure from me from a farmer, from a person, from a grower, from an estate manager, I can't explain it. Hopefully the passion from how I come across shows it, and and it's that, and it's the same as what we're trying to do across the whole of the estate. It's that passion, it's that drive to what we can achieve for everybody to say, wow, look what we're trying to do.
Perfect. And that leads me really nicely on to the next question, Paul, which is, Obviously, the UK is going through this massive phase of transition right now, and Elms is coming down the line at some point, and we do have the kind of early stages of the natural capital market forming at least the intent for corporates to invest into nature. What do you think we need to do as a country to really put the systems in place to become an exemplar for the rest of the world as to how land can and should be managed?
Good question, and a difficult one, because each land holding, each landowner, whether you're farmer, tenant, landlord, is very, very different. I think what you've got to try and do. We are talking of these keywords, this natural capital, the ecosystems. It's to understand those, and obviously there's nothing out there at the moment, Tim, that's measurable. But the only thing that you can probably do is, well, when you speak to somebody, we talk in acres, but I think is there going to be more of a shift where we're talking in meters of hedgerows and X amount of earthworms in our land. So it's understanding it from the ground up. How can we appreciate that, and whether that's going to come back to what we're trying to achieve in our mob grazing system, where looking at the results, there's probably going to be more carbon capturing through from there, because these are words, these are outcomes, Tim, that the industry is going to go to. So as far as the UK, and I think we are there, from what we're trying to do, from what you're trying to do on your 90-acre holding, to other people, whether it's regen, everybody's trying it now. Everybody wants to be the best of the best, the top 25 within the industry. So if everybody's trying to achieve that end goal, Tim, surely people's got to be looking at the UK to saying, well, look, they're actually doing this actually right, because there's too much in the media about the rainforests being destruction and how Brazil's farming. So, okay, so do you really want to be associated with that? So how can we grow something or use something in replacement of soya within the UK? And that's where technology comes in. That's where new crops, that's where innovation comes in, which, as far as the UK, I think we are there at the forefront. Well, look at us on the COVID vaccine. It happened right here. So surely what we can try and do as an island and as an industry, we should be at the top, but it still pulls it down to boots on ground level and understanding what we can got and how we can improve it and make it better.
So really, it's about every farm taking responsibility, maybe to some degree, but really understanding what they have, and I guess on a farm by farm basis, creating some form of management plan as to how they can, again, everything you shared before, improve, add value.
I think it goes to your own holding, but also communications with your neighbours, Tim. I sit on the Wolds Facilitation Fund, so that covers 24,000 acres here on the Lincolnshire Wolds. So if you put that as a land area, and then you put that, you overlay it onto a map on habitats, on ecosystem services and farm operations, so it's at times, yes, you've got this boundary and we've got the red line boundary around the estate, but you've also got to go 10, 15 kilometers out of that and start and speak to neighbors. And how can you interlink, and how can we work together as an industry? For me here in Handland, Tim, we have no equipment. I use contractors, but I use 3 contractors, because they've all got individual pieces of equipment in the shed, so we can say, right, we need that today and that today, and that's great. So we're working with people from outside the area, and these guys have got expert knowledge as well. So we're all trying to bring the outside in, which I think, as well, as far as the industry do, the competition is the other side of the hedge. Well, I've done 10 ton a hectare and my neighbour's only done 9. That's the competition. But I think that mindset has got to go further out to saying, okay, how can we interlink these ecosystem services? How can we interlink what's happening further afield to make it better? And that's where I think the facilitation fund comes in, where we can present these courses and speakers to people, so they can understand it. Because I think sometimes you get too focused on your own little bubble, and at times you need to spend time out of that bubble to come back in again. So that's one thing that I'm trying to achieve, and I think everybody, we should do as well, because once you start and talk to a neighbour, a farmer, a simple conversation, what you think is probably going to be 2 minutes can be 10, 15 minutes, and just talk about everything. But that's what it's about, and understand it. So again, cross-channel, think out of the red boundary box as well to how it can all interlink.
Perfect. I think that is a growing movement, isn't it, Paul, and a growing mindset that actually, if you just focus on your own holding, there's only so much you can achieve. But if you really start to work with the landscape, not only are there going to be a plethora of new opportunities, but also, I guess, being part of that wider community and contributing to a bigger project is obviously very fulfilling as well.
For
so
sure.
Great. Brilliant, Paul. Thank you. Now, time to transition to the Q&A. And I can see that there's been quite a few questions that have been asked. If anyone else has questions, please do feel free to shout. So I'll start from the top. So Angie asks, what other examples did you look at before embarking on your new vision? And can you point to any best in show examples?
Best in show examples. Best in show examples. I think to achieve the estate, our vision, we looked at the wider, bigger picture. What are other people doing? We can all look at other estates to what they're doing, and you can try to achieve to that and see how they're getting to their end goal. But that's probably separate to what we've got here in our environment. So we need to be site specific, should I say, to our vision. Because if we look at anybody else's, that works for them. That's their vision. Yes, you can pull in some information that they've done, because there is some fantastic places out there doing some marvelous work. But I think for our vision, it's got to be site specific, which it is, because we're working in with the AONB, because we're working in with the local planning team, because we're working with this small community that we're trying to make bigger. So again, it's, if you could pinpoint from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different places and then try and pull them in together, that's the starting point to create the vision. But our vision starts from what we've got already. So that's it's very difficult, because it's, we're trying to improve our vision here for our land holding, for our environment, which could be totally separate who's from somebody out of the county on a different location. But setting out these goals, for sure, but that's the vision and that's the standards that we're trying to work to.
Brilliant. I guess, Paul, something you mentioned earlier, you're a part of quite a few different networks as well. So I guess there's naturally going to be new ideas that pop up through all the different networks you're a part of, and then you can start to think about how it could be applied.
Yeah, for sure. I was very fortunate to do the Worshipful Company of Farmers back in 2016, and the network and the mindset of the guys that do that course and my group and everybody else within the whole time frame. So it's having that ability to bounce ideas back to people and get positive, and you'll get negative feedback. So again, ask some questions. Challenge yourself to saying, well, can it really be done, and how can you achieve it? So again, it takes us back, Tim, to going out of the red boundary, which we know we're dealing with and we're trying to improve, but also take out segments from other areas, look and key. We all know at the moment through COVID, there's a lot more webinars going on. There's a lot more films that we can watch and books and going through from there. So you can never take on as much information, but it's what works for best practice in your surrounding is the key one for our vision.
Yeah, brilliant. So it's really a very authentic vision. What do you want to create on your estate? And then what do you have? And then start to pull in ideas where it's appropriate. Yep. Brilliant. Okay. Kit asks, what's been your biggest challenge since joining the estate that you originally thought was insurmountable?
Biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge is dealing with the amount of changes that we've got to try and do to improve it. We all knew it was good, and it's when you start and get in and you look at the complexity of a project. In the past, you'd probably go, right, we'll go and clear a ditch out, which is we'll organise a good driver, we'll organise the flail man. But for here, it's each project has got 6 or 7 different parts to it. you know, in the past I've been used to 1 and 2, but whereas here it's 6, 7, 8. So it's okay, we're in an AONB. What can we do as far as permissions? What do we need to do as far as making sure we've got the right licenses in? What else do we need to do as making sure that we've got the contractor booked in? So again, it's all those tick boxes procedures. You'd think it would be a lot simpler, but it's not, because if you're trying to achieve your end goal, which we are, to increase everything, the biodiversity, the habitats and whatever, it's making sure that we've set out from day one that all these procedures are ticked off and we've tried to achieve where we need to be. So that's been the big eye opener to me for in the past, that we just go and do it. And I suppose it's where areas have been where we've taken back in and where we need to have a look and we need to make that improvement. It's setting those stall out, Tim, to get everything all tick box before we actually get there and get it done. So it's a lot more. You would think you could turn around and you could do something in 2 days. Sometimes it's a month or two in planning, but that's what you've got to try and do, because it involves so many people and the amount of work to do it. So that's the big one for me. You know, from starting off in my first week, and I think we wrote a list of 117 projects. I think within 6 months that was up to 700 and something. And that project list goes up and down all day long. So whether it's on land management, whether it's on property, whether it's on everything else, that list is always going up and down, up and down. So again, you can imagine the amount of planning that takes into that, but the end goal is fantastic, you know, and that's the thing. All the hard effort and all the planning and all the discussions and walks and bits and bobs, and then we've actually done it, ticked off, and it's achieved it. So that's one big factor for me, you know.
Great. So it's it's almost to say there is complexity whether you like it or not, and you've just got to wade through it and just, you know, keep going until it's done.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. Okay. Julian asks, do you milk any of the Lincoln Reds to provide any other estate-based marketable products?
Yes. So good question, Julian. We've just started milking the Lincoln Reds. So if you go back to the Lincoln Red herd as there was dual breed, so there was milkers. So if you go with the pun Lincoln Red cheese, ta-da! What a great marketing tool. So yeah, so we've just started to milk 10 cows. We're in the process of putting a cheesery together. We've taken on a new employee, Mark, to look after the cheesery. So yeah, that's one thing that we are doing. We're looking at bigger projects as well, across the estate, Gillian, not only from milking the cattle. We're looking at trying how we can increase a rare breed poultry flock. We've got the distillery. We're looking at potential winery. The list is, you can keep going. It's that blue sky, where can we go? But yeah, the Lincoln Red milk is starting to come off the udder, shall we say, and heading into the cheesery soon.
Very cool. Very good to hear. Nicola asks, how should, if someone wanted to get into sustainable or regenerative agriculture education, how would they do that? And what do you suspect, Paul, the education for the next generation of farmers should entail?
Regen agriculture, and I can't remember which university it is, but I think it's down in the southwest. They're actually now doing a regen course. So maybe I'll just sort of pick up on that one afterwards, Tim, or just get an email address. But there's regen courses out there. People keep asking about organic farming systems. Is there organic farming courses out there? That's the only thing that there isn't. And I think a lot of it is, again, hands-on, you know, experience, boots on, understanding, ground level experience as well. But as far as courses, I think there's more and more coming on to understand it. And again, I think through again, I mentioned it before, the effect of COVID, the amount of webinars, the amount of people that are talking about regen ag, social media, I think, is a good one to follow as well, because people are happy to tell the story, the positives and the failures. And I think there can be understanding from those guys that are doing it, and then also, you know, from lecture-based systems as well. So I think it will come. Tim and I spoke on it before the meeting on regen. I asked one or two large regen farmers, would they want a regen certification? And the answer, surprisingly, was no, because it's how they choose to farm their land. You know, it's not a certification, it's a way of farming, it's a best practice, what they see. So again, it's those, and I think there are some people out there who've been doing it a long time, and I think there's those that we can learn from through webinars, through literature, and through these college courses, where I think it is going to change and move forward, Tim.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Paul. And Eve's just put in the Savory Institute as a place to go to have a look at holistic management, which I would definitely recommend, and Schumacher College as well. And I'd also recommend Richard Perkins' YouTube channel. So Richard Perkins, Ridgedale Permaculture in Sweden. That's another great place to look. We've only got a few minutes left, so let's see how many more we can get through. So someone asks, how did you find the exceptional lead for your gin distillery? That's a good question.
So the gin distillery, our drive is to try and get entrepreneurial flair into the system. Sometimes it's very difficult because people want to know what they're earning, Tim. People want to know what their monthly salary is, and that was the mindset that we had to change. So through social media, through other projects that we have and events, systems, you know, we thought, well, let's create our own distillery manager. So it was just through advertisements, you know, going through from there. Luckily, we fell on Tristan, and I think with Tristan as well, he's got the passion where he wants to become his own boss, which he is. So that's that entrepreneurial drive, but he still wants the salary role. So it's picking up on these people that, okay, they've got the drive, they've got the passion, and they want to do it, because that's what's got to take it forward. Because if not, you just end up with like a run-of-the-mill system where you're just pouring a product in one end and taking it out the other. So it's having people with passion, it's finding those people with passion. And I think it's a niche market, I think, on the distillery, because the gin market sales went up, they started to plateau. We've hit that. We've been very fortunate that we launched a product last year, and it's now just won an award by the Craft Gin Distillery for the best pink gin on the market. So again, we've hit the market running. We've been fortunate to find Tristan, but again, it's putting it out there to people saying, look, if you want to take this vision or take this product, you've got to run with it and have the drive and the passion to share what you're trying to do as a manager or an owner, to put it to him.
Brilliant, Paul. Yeah, because I think, you know, irrespective of whether it's gin or anything else, it's about finding those passionate people that you can trust and rely on to basically build up an enterprise, I guess.
It's that, and it's the passion, you know. It's got to be, you know, if you need to pull the reins back on somebody, it's a great feeling. Don't take that the right way, because it's just like, hold on a minute, because let's just make sure we get this first product right, because if they're keen, you know, they are that racehorse that want to go, well, let's go. Let's just release a little bit of rain times and times and times of going through from there. So we're looking at changes at the distillery, and we're going to see what we can do over the next year or two and make alternate products. So.
Brilliant. Great, Paul. Jonathan asks, is the aim to farm all the land in hand, or will you work with tenant farmers?
No, so we are working with, obviously we've got some long-standing tenancies as well. So we're working with the tenants. So we're trying to understand on what their objectives are, you know, understand what our objectives are and work with them. So whether it's a case where we've got land adjoining to each other, you know, a shared responsibility, a shared cost. One of the tenants does some of my contracting work. So again, it's working with the farmers, with the tenants, whether they're in the holding itself or our neighbouring farmers, to understand and share the vision going forward. So again, we have an annual walk round with them. You know, there's times there's a phone call to them about we're out pigeon shooting or going through from there. And this is the other thing, whereas probably in the past there wasn't a resident estate manager, whereas I'm pretty much 24/7 on the estate. So they've had to see that change. So again, working with the tenants, working with our neighbours, you know, to transition and take our vision all the way forward.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you, Paul. Just conscious of coming up to the last few minutes now, but I'm just going to try and combine the question from Angie and also from John, and just look at the commercial opportunities you're pursuing on the estate with regards to sort of residential. How do you balance the desire to expand kind of maybe commercially with the maybe resistance that the community might put on you? How do you find that balance between expansion and managing community?
I get the expansion has got to come, but we've been transparent from day one, Tim, that this is our vision. You know, if we want 200 people to come and live and work on the estate, we've told them from day one. It's not a shock. You know, I think on one of another interviews where there was talking to local planners. So we've actually been as an estate to the local planning office and sat down with them and told them and shared our vision. Because all of a sudden, if you're starting to put in planning applications for X, Y, and Z, they can then understand where it's actually coming from. It's not just another planning application. So the transparency, sharing what we're trying to do from the offset. So that has been one key. The community, yes, there's always going to be positives, there's going to be negatives. When we do the repair works and the upgrades on the properties, we take it to the nth degree. We come away from oil, we come away from single glazed glass. We're putting in new systems to make that property better, more efficient and cheaper to run for any prospective tenant. So this is what we're trying to put across as our message and our vision to our current tenants and to our neighbours of what we're trying to achieve going forward. So it's like we said before, there's going to be positives, there's going to be negatives, there's going to be great outcomes and there's going to be disappointments. But that's part of trying to achieve our vision at the far end, Tim, that we've sent out.
Brilliant. Brilliant, Paul. And again, goes back to your point, just taking the community on a journey with you, you know, that hopefully does remove a lot of the tensions and troubles that you might otherwise face. So great. Well, we've come to the end of the session. I think we got all the questions answered as well, which is brilliant. So yeah, Paul, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time. It's been absolutely fascinating to really kind of get under the skin of what it's like inside an estate that's going through a huge transition, not just from a brand perspective and a community perspective, but preparing for the new market. So thank you so much for taking the time to share everything that you're doing so transparently and kind of really, yeah, I guess what I really got from this conversation is you're really looking to see what you can do to support the wider community as well with the amount that you share. So yeah, so thank you for showing the way, and it's been fascinating. And I hope everyone that's joined today got a lot from it. So yeah, I just want to say thank you, Paul, for taking the time. And yeah, we look forward to follow-up conversations.
You're more than welcome. Many thanks, Tim.